if you're not naturally a relationship person, it's going to be hard to be a superintendent. People will not follow you if they don't know that you care for them. And so you have to exhibit that piece in which you care for people, you love people. Solving problems really is the most exciting piece for me. And it really doesn't make any difference what that problem is. I get up every morning excited about solving problems. So I think that's probably the best part of my day is if I can go home in the evening and say, I solved a problem today and I made the world better, I made our world better, then I feel good.
Today, I will be interviewing Wade Stanford, and we're going to learn about what it's like to work as a superintendent. So, Wade, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Miranda. It's my pleasure, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to share what it's like to be a superintendent in public schools today.
Great. We're so happy to have you. So, let's go ahead and get started. Here at the Job Dictionary, we like starting off with three kind of rapid fire questions. So, Wade, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah. So what I do as a school superintendent, I think the easy answer is that we cast the vision and we provide daily leadership for the district. But I think when you start digging deeper, Miranda, it is that we are the guardians of the vision and the values of a district. And then our sole responsibility is to break down barriers to allow every stakeholder to be successful. I live in Palestine, Texas right now. And as a kid, I wanted to work in education. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. And so that was really a driver for me all the way through school.
Yeah, that's amazing that you kind of were able to stay in that path. So, how long have you been working as a superintendent and how did you get into it?
So I'm in my 8th year as a superintendent. And the way that I got there was I started out as a classroom teacher and a coach, football coach, basketball, baseball, track, and then worked my way up through that from a coach to an athletic director and then to an assistant principal of a campus, then a director of HR, assistant superintendent, and then a superintendent.
Wow. That's quite a
Yeah, it was
journey.
a journey, and it allowed me to really see every facet and nearly every area that I deal with now on a daily basis.
Okay. And do you think that that's a typical journey that superintendents have, or is it normally a lot quicker than that?
So I think it's normally quicker than that, and I think we're seeing
Okay.
that today that it's
Okay.
quicker. And I don't know that one is better than the other, but that was the
Okay.
path that I took, and
Yeah.
it's played out well for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now going into kind of your daily work and your tasks, what do you do as a superintendent
Yeah.
exactly? What does a day in your life look like?
Yeah, and so I was thinking about that prior to starting this, and there's no 2 days that are exactly alike. Uh,
Okay.
the only control I have is early in the morning, and so for me, my day starts with devotional time early in the morning.
Okay.
Then I dedicate time for myself and self-care and do my workout in the morning, and then I try to post something positive on social media and then it starts with meetings or solving problems that come up throughout the day. But the majority of the time is interacting with other people and
Okay.
solving problems.
Okay. And how early do you get to the school?
Well, it all depends on which day it is, but
Okay.
my goal is to try to get to school somewhere between 7:15 and 7:30,
Okay.
and that gives me an opportunity to really dedicate some time to getting some things started there in the day and kind of wrap my head around my
Okay.
schedule before school actually starts at 8 o'clock.
Okay. So about 30 to 45 minutes
Right.
before.
Yeah. And that allows me to get here a little bit earlier than most other people, and
Okay.
I can focus a little bit before it starts to get crazy.
Okay. Yeah. And now how late do you leave after school's out
And that all depends on again
on the day?
have in a typical day. I am really dedicated to getting out of here around or at least by 4:30. Now, if we
Okay.
have meetings and stuff like that, it can be anytime after that up until sometimes 10 or 11 o'clock at night, sometimes
Okay.
till midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning if we're on
Wow.
the road with an athletic event or some other
Okay.
competition.
Okay. And do you see that you take a lot of your work home, like, on the weekends? How
Yeah,
does
and
that
so
look?
Miranda, I think that's a real important piece for people that are exploring
Yeah.
administration or looking at the superintendency. Early on, I took stuff home every single night,
Okay.
and I worked at night. But over this last several years, including the entire time I've been a superintendent, I've been dedicated to not taking one thing home at night, and that probably have held true to that over the 8 years, except for 2 or 3
That's
times that I've
amazing.
had to do something. But I think there has to be a work-life rhythm. There's no
Yeah.
balance, but there has to be a rhythm, and you have to be where
Okay.
your feet are. And so when I go home, I try to be home with my wife, and I try to spend time with her, and I try to take care of myself and not extend that work day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so what about summer breaks and winter breaks? Are you still working?
Well, yes, in essence, we are. I think the winter break during Christmas is probably a little bit less hectic. We
Okay.
typically try to take a vacation during winter. During our
Okay.
Christmas break, we'll go and spend somewhere for Christmas and
Okay.
have that time. Summer is probably the busiest time that we have. And so I don't take a vacation during the summer. I have now shifted that until September because we get school started and then everything seems to relax a little bit. And then I can
Okay.
take a week to 2 weeks off in the month of September.
Okay. And as far as tasks or jobs that you need to get done throughout the summer, what does the summer look like for you?
Yeah, so the summer, like I said, is the busiest time. So
Mhm.
where we're at is that during the summer, we're closing out the year that we just finished. So
Okay.
financially, academically, projects, everything, we're closing that year out. But at the same time, we're starting to stand up the next year. So we're working on
Okay.
our budget. We're developing the budget for the next year. We're looking at academic goals, the initiatives that we have to do for the next year. We're starting professional learning during the summer for our staff, for ourselves. And then we have conferences and presentations that we do during the summer. So, like the month of June, I'm in the office maybe probably 10 days in the month of June because
Okay.
of
Okay.
traveling and going to conferences and things. So, those are the tasks that we do during the summer.
Amazing. And so now what topics does someone have to be interested in order to enjoy advancing as a superintendent? Basically, what do you end up thinking about every single day?
Yeah. And so I think that when you start looking at that, number one is leadership and
Okay.
different styles of leadership because the main thing is I feel like as a superintendent is growing those leaders around you and understanding how you have to lead to be able to get them to move in the
Yeah.
direction. I think the second topic is relationships. Our business is driven by relationships, developing relationships, mending relationships. And so that's a big piece. And then the third topic is and this is probably a general piece, Miranda, but it's student outcomes. Uh,
Okay.
how are students growing? What are the outcomes? What are the pieces that you're looking at to see that we're being successful? And that could be
Okay.
from academics to social emotional learning to just college and career readiness. And so there's
Yeah.
always the student outcome piece that you have to start looking at.
Okay. Amazing. And now kind of building off of that, are there certain certifications or degrees that are required to be a superintendent?
Right. So in the state of Texas, you have to be certified as a
Okay.
superintendent.
Okay.
And typically, that's a path that you start out as a teacher, and then you may take some other leadership role. It
Okay.
doesn't necessarily have to be a campus leadership, but some type of leadership, whether that be in curriculum or operations or something. And you typically
Okay.
get your master's or your doctorate, and then you work on that certification for superintendency, but that you actually cannot serve as a superintendent. I think they have some emergencies or 1 year certifications, so that there's some things that you can do as you're working on that degree or that certification, but you do have to be certified as a superintendent.
Okay. And now, what natural strengths or talents does someone have to have in order to be a really good superintendent?
I think that number one, I think that, and I'm going back to an answer that I talked about all ago. I think if you're not naturally a relationship person, it's
Okay.
going to be hard to be a superintendent. Um, People will not follow you if they don't know that you care for them.
Okay.
And so you have to exhibit that piece in which you care for people, you love people, and I heard this on another podcast I was listening to. You have to be other people minded. So you have to be thinking about others. And so it's that
Okay.
relationship piece. And then I think another piece is so important as a superintendent is a growth mindset. You have to be thinking, how do I continuously grow? How do we get better? How does the district get better? How do students get better? How does staff get better? And so there's that growth mindset piece.
Yeah. And now, what tools or technologies do you see that you fall back on every day as part of your job?
Yeah, and so I think that some of that depends on which district you're in because there's student
Okay.
management systems that you have to do, and then there's platforms for academics and some different things. But I'm going to tell you the one that I think is so important in today's world, and that's social media. Whether
Okay.
that be whether you're active, because I'm active on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and I think it's vital as a superintendent today to be telling the story that you're doing, your district's doing, and getting that out on social media so
Okay.
that the world knows that story because the world is going to tell a story that they want to tell. And
Hmm.
we have to beat them to it and tell them the right story, the positive
Okay.
things, and the wonderful things that are happening in public ed.
That's amazing. And just out of curiosity now, um, how often do you see yourself interacting with students?
So, I'm going to be very honest with you, not as much as I want to, but that's
Okay.
because of me. Uh,
Okay.
But I would say that at least once a week that I'm interacting with
Okay.
students.
Okay.
But I have to put that on my schedule. I have to make that a priority to go and to visit and see students, to interact with them all the way from our pre-K students
Okay.
up to our seniors. And again, I think that is developing those relationships so that those students know the superintendent so they can do that. And one of the pieces that I do to overcome that is I have a student advisory council. I call it the Panther
Okay.
Council because our mascot is the Panthers. But that's students that are from 7th grade to 12th grade, two per grade
Okay.
level. And we meet once a month and have real honest conversations about how school is going
Great.
for the student.
That's great. And is that so that's a one-on-one conversation that you have with them, or is it in a group setting?
So it's a group setting, and so we're sitting in
Okay.
a room, and typically I'm the only one in the room, and we shut the door, we eat lunch together, and then we talk about life as a student,
That's
and
amazing.
they are very honest with me, and tell me the actual truth about things from their
Wow.
perspective, and it
Wow.
allows us to drive and change things in our district.
Yeah. And so now kind of building off of that, how do you stay updated with the developments of your school or maybe other districts? How do you get that information and how do you use that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there's multiple ways, and some of that is going to conferences.
Okay.
TASA has a tremendous network of conferences. TASB has the opportunity to go to conferences, and you can get updates from that. You can learn new techniques. You can learn the path that things are going. And then I think the other piece is just staying connected to my colleagues and being in
Okay.
different organizations in different groups, staying connected with them, and and really having an ear to what's happening at the Texas
Hmm.
Education Agency,
Okay.
because that allows us to predict out the way that they're going to do things, whether it be assessment or curriculum or funding, and then maybe get ahead of that. And so that's how we use that is we're always trying to forecast out where we think the trends are going to go. And so
Okay.
we consider ourselves an early adopter in our district, and so we try to be ahead of the curve and adopt things that we think are coming down the road for us in the state.
Yeah. And so now also out of curiosity again, how is the relationship between the superintendent and the school's principal?
Yeah, and so I would say that is one of the most important relationships.
Okay.
So because I served as a campus principal, it gives
Yeah.
me a perspective to look at that. And so constantly building that relationship, constantly developing that relationship, constantly in communication with all four of my campus principals to make sure that they have what they need, that they're being supported
Okay.
the way they need to be supported, and to know that they understand what the standard is and that we're striving to meet that standard every single day. So it's a constant piece of
Yeah.
communication with them.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now these next set of questions are probably some of my favorites because we get to talk about your personal perspective. So, as a superintendent, what part of your job is the most exciting or the most interesting for you?
Yeah, so solving problems really is the
Yeah.
most exciting piece for me, and it really doesn't make any difference what that problem is. I get up every morning excited about solving problems, and so
Okay.
meeting with students and solving their direct problems is probably, if I start looking at the tip of the iceberg of the
Hmm.
excitement, that's what it is. Because then I know that I'm impacting them specifically. And so I think that's probably the best part of my day is if I can go home in the evening and say, I solved a problem today and I made the world better, I made our
Yeah,
world better, then I feel good.
that's great. So now on the flip side, what parts of the job are maybe harder, emotionally challenging, or just not so fun for you?
Yeah. So personnel challenges
Okay.
when adults don't live up to the standard that we have,
Okay.
and then I have to have conversations with them, or I have to take adverse action related to them. That part's challenging. That part's emotional.
Okay.
That part's hard because not only am I impacting one individual, I'm probably impacting a spouse. I'm probably
Yeah.
impacting their own personal kids,
Hmm.
and it's impacting the culture of our district when
Okay.
adults don't live up to the standard. And so that part's hard, but I think that's because we build such deep relationships that I have to have conversations with people that I've built deep
Yeah.
relationships with.
Yeah. And now I know that sometimes in education as a whole, parents can be a tough topic. So do you have to deal with parents? How do you solve conflict with them?
Yeah, so I do. Most of the problems are solved, or most of the challenges are solved at the campus level. But
Okay.
when it gets to me, and this is a fact, when something gets to me, there's no easy answer. If there was an easy answer, somebody would have already had it. And so
Yeah.
it's typically a difficult situation. But I
Okay.
think with parents, I think, and I'm a parent and a grandparent, and so I understand when we say that they can be difficult, but the fact is they are doing nothing but advocating for their student.
Yeah.
And so they need to be listened to, they need to be heard, they need to be
Okay.
valued, and then they need to have honest and transparent conversations. If they're off base, then we need to tell them that in a loving, caring way. If we can't do what they want, we need to tell them that in a loving, caring way. Um, if if we can, we need to admit that we made a mistake.
Okay.
If we're wrong, we need to admit to them we made a mistake. And then we
Yeah.
need to rectify that mistake and be honest about it. But I think number one is not to take things personal when with parents. And number two, understand they're
Yeah.
trying to do the best job they can for their kiddos. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line. And then just be honest with them and listen.
Yeah. Okay. So now what do people underestimate about being a superintendent?
Yeah. So I think the underestimation is the
Mhm.
physical and emotional toll that it takes on a person.
Okay.
I think that education as a whole, I think that people understand that that it's an emotional toll, that there's a lot. I just don't know that people understand the physical drain that
Mhm.
it has on
Yeah.
the body and what what it can do. And I don't think they really understand the heart and the soul of educators today that are trying to do the best that they
Yeah.
possibly can. And and so I think that that part's hard because so many people haven't ever said in that. And Miranda, I think the other piece is that we talked about parents a while ago, and I think when community members look at educators, a lot of times they didn't have a real positive experience in
Yeah.
education. So they're
Mhm.
expecting everything to be hinged off of that experience they had. And so I think
Yeah.
they underestimate the love that
Yeah.
educators have for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, that's great. And so now what do people overestimate about being a superintendent?
Yeah, that you get paid a lot and that everything's just easy and that
Yeah.
you don't do anything. But no, I think that it's just when they overestimate that it's that you're making decisions so easily without a lot of thought and without a
Okay.
lot of care. And I don't think that they know I think they overestimate again just the turmoil that goes in to
Yeah.
some of the decisions. And sometimes the decisions look like they're made quick, but there's been a
Okay.
lot of thought process in it before it's
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
Okay. And now going back to the pay
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I had to do some Googling on recently before we got onto this call.
Right.
And according to Google, the average salary for a superintendent is about 174,000. So from your experience, is this true? Is this false? What do you think about that
Yeah.
number?
So I think that's probably average, I would say. It all depends on the size of school district, the location of the school
Yeah.
district. The more students that the district has, the larger the district is, the typically the more the payment, the salary is. The smaller the
Okay.
district, the less that salary is. But it's all in relationship to the work and to the revenue that's driven to the school district. But I'd say that that's pretty typical. I think the piece that I would say about salary is um, if that's the driver to get into a superintendency, if that's the only driver, then you're going to be disappointed
Yeah.
because the work is much more valuable than the salary. Now, the salary is important, and a superintendent never, ever, ever, ever needs to apologize for the amount of money they make because I promise you,
Okay.
they deserve every dollar that they make. Uh, but I would caution people to say that's my only driver. That's my only
Okay.
reason to be a superintendent.
Okay. And so now, as your 8 years of being a superintendent, how have you seen the job change and how do you see it changing in the future?
Yeah. So I think that it's changed drastically over time. I think when we had the pandemic and when the United States shut down, I think we saw a lot of change in people's personalities. And so the
Yeah.
job has become even more demanding right now,
Okay.
managing either staff, students, or parents and their
Hmm.
expectations or lack of expectations or lack of desire. So that I think that's changed. I think in the
Yeah.
state of Texas, we're seeing a huge political attack on public education.
Hmm.
And so that's changed. And so no longer are we just running a school district. We're now an advocate for public education. So we
Yeah.
interact with senators and representatives and constantly working to be that person at the forefront to try to help drive legislation
Oh,
um,
wow.
to protect education and where it's going to go because I think that's just going to become a probably a bigger challenge as we move forward
Hmm.
as the political
Yeah.
arena.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea, to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
completely
yeah,
honest.
and I've changed totally on that. When I first got in 8 years ago, I wasn't much of an advocate, and now um, I've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people in Austin as we're working to protect public education.
That's amazing. So now we want to give our listeners some advice. So Wade, what do you recommend that candidates do in order to set themselves apart if they're looking to become a superintendent?
Well, so I think if they're looking to be a superintendent, I think to set themselves apart, I think number one, they try to get a diverse background of experience.
Okay.
I talked about my journey, and I don't know that you have to take my journey, but I think to be a successful superintendent is to be able to understand every aspect that you have to
Yeah.
oversee direct or provide leadership for. And so however that looks, I think that they need to go and learn to find people that can teach them. And then the last piece of advice is I would say that you look for somebody that's successful in that role, get as close to them as you can. That's either through Zooms, that's going to and shadowing them, visiting with them, and learning
Yeah.
what did they do to get there, how did they make that happen, and
Okay.
learning directly from those people that are successful as
Yeah.
superintendents.
Yeah. And so now, are there any books, resources, or programs that you would suggest that our listeners look into if they want to become superintendent?
Well, yes, I don't know that this leads you to being a superintendent, but I did grab a few books, and so
Okay.
hopefully I can hold these up and you can see them. I think one
Yes.
of the first books that I would recommend that all superintendents read is The Energy Bus by John Gordon. All leaders need to read that unbelievable book. The next one that I think is great, and we're reading this one as a, ooh, let me see if I can, this is hard, 'cause I'm trying to, The Four Disciplines of Execution. I think this is a great guide to moving initiatives forward. And then Jonah Berger has a great book called The Catalyst. And if you look on there, it's How to Change Anyone's Mind. So this is great, I think, as you start talking about navigating the future. It's also great in relationships. And then one that complements that is a book by David Nurse called Do It. And it's looking at the 9 archetypes that keep people from making decisions and
Wow.
moving forward. And so those are 4 that I think are just fabulous reads, fabulous ways to just grow your leadership and to be effective in relationships and moving a district forward.
Yeah. And if you had to pick one of those 4, which one would you recommend the most if you
Um,
had to?
yeah, the Energy Bus.
Okay,
John
great.
Gordon, anything John Gordon has out, you need to dig into. But the Energy Bus, if you have you read it yourself?
No, I have not,
You need to
but I
read
will
it.
definitely
You
look
need to
into
read
it.
it. It is
Yes.
a fabulous read, and it can be applied anywhere, any place in
Okay,
anyone's life.
amazing. I will definitely take a look
Okay.
at that. So now if you could talk to your younger self when you were first beginning your career, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, take chances. Don't
Okay,
wait. Be bold. Be courageous. Make somebody tell you no. Move faster
okay,
than you think you need to move. Uh,
okay.
and I think that that's what I would tell myself now.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so now finally, where can people reach out to you or where can they follow along with your work?
Yeah, so they can see me on Twitter. It's Wade Stanford. It's all
Okay,
lowercase. Instagram is Wade.Stanford, and then I'm on
okay.
LinkedIn also. And so you can
Yeah.
you can find me, search for me there. And those are 3 different platforms that I try to stay active on. And you can find me there and just follow the work that we're doing in the district.
So, well, Wade, thank you so much for joining me today, for giving your insight on what it's like to be a superintendent. It was greatly appreciated. Thank you again for joining me.
Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate it, and I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here and share a little bit.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!